You woke up this morning and your body feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, like someone filled your limbs with concrete overnight. And you haven't even done anything yet. You haven't gone to work or run errands or had difficult conversations or dealt with any crisis. You've just been existing, maybe lying in bed or sitting on the couch or moving slowly through your space. And yet you feel completely drained, utterly exhausted, like you've run a marathon, when really you've barely moved at all. There's this heaviness behind your eyes, a pressure in your skull that makes everything feel slightly harder than it should be. And your thoughts move through sludge, slow and sticky and effortful. And you look at the day ahead, or even just the next hour, and feel this overwhelming sense of impossibility, like you simply don't have the energy for any of it. And then comes the guilt, that terrible voice that says you have no right to be this tired, you haven't earned rest, you haven't done anything to justify feeling this depleted. Other people work full-time and care for families and manage homes, and somehow have energy left over while you can barely shower or make a meal or answer a text. And what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? Why is existing so exhausting when it seems to come so easily to everyone else? But here's what I need you to hear, what I need you to really take in. Your exhaustion is real. It's not imagined or exaggerated or a sign of weakness or laziness. It's a genuine physiological response to what your nervous system has been dealing with. And even though you might not have done anything visible or productive or measurable today, your body and brain have been working incredibly hard, burning through energy at a rate that most people don't understand, because the work is invisible. It's happening inside, in the background, in all the ways your anxious mind and hypervigilant nervous system are trying to keep you safe in a world that often feels threatening. The tiredness you feel is the accumulation of that internal labor, the constant monitoring and analyzing and preparing and protecting that your brain does without you even realizing it's happening. And it's just as exhausting, sometimes more exhausting, than physical labor, because there's no clear beginning or end, no moment when you clock out and let your system rest. It just runs and runs and runs until you have nothing left. When you live with anxiety, your brain is essentially running multiple programs simultaneously in the background of your awareness, like a computer with dozens of tabs open that you forgot about, but that are still consuming processing power and draining the battery. There's the rumination, that endless loop of thoughts about what happened yesterday, or last week or last year, replaying conversations and moments and decisions, analyzing what you said and what they said and what it meant and what you should have done differently. Turning the same situations over and over in your mind, trying to find some resolution or understanding or peace that never quite comes. There's the anticipatory anxiety, your mind spinning forward into the future, trying to predict every possible thing that could go wrong, every scenario you might need to prepare for, every potential disappointment or failure or conflict, rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet, imagining disasters that will probably never occur, building elaborate contingency plans for situations that exist only in your imagination. There's a hypervigilance, your nervous system constantly scanning your environment and your internal state for signs of danger, monitoring every sensation in your body, every shift in someone's tone of voice, every change in circumstance, staying alert and ready to respond to threats that might not even be real threats, but that your brain has learned to interpret as dangerous. All of this mental activity, this constant thinking and worrying and planning and scanning, it requires energy, real biological energy in the form of glucose and oxygen and neurochemical resources. And your brain, despite being only about 2% of your body weight, uses roughly 20% of your body's total energy. And when it's running in overdrive, when it's caught in anxiety loops and hypervigilant monitoring, that percentage goes up, sometimes significantly. So even though you've been lying in bed or sitting still, your brain has been sprinting, has been working overtime. And that work is just as real and just as depleting as if you'd spent the day doing physical labor. The fatigue you feel is your body's way of telling you that your energy reserves are low, that the system needs to slow down and replenish, that you can't keep running at this intensity without consequence. But it's not just mental, it's deeply physical too, because anxiety doesn't just live in your thoughts, it lives in your body, in the tension you're probably holding right now in your shoulders and jaw and stomach without even realizing it. When your nervous system is in a state of chronic activation, when it's stuck in that fight or flight response or cycling between activation and shutdown, your muscles stay partially contracted ready for action, ready to fight or flee from danger. And that constant muscular tension, even when it's subtle, requires energy to maintain and creates this underlying physical exhaustion that compounds the mental fatigue. You might notice that your body feels tight or achy even though you haven't exercised, or that your breathing is shallow and lives high in your chest, or that your heart rate is elevated for no apparent reason. And all of these are signs that your nervous system is activated, that it's in a state of perceived threat, and being in that state for hours or days or weeks at a time is incredibly draining. There's also the exhaustion that comes from emotional suppression, from spending your days managing and containing feelings that want to be expressed, feelings that arise naturally in response to stress or disappointment or frustration or sadness, but that you've learned aren't safe to show, either because showing emotion was discouraged when you were younger, or because you're in environments now where vulnerability feels risky, or because you've internalized the belief that your feelings are too much or burdensome to others. So you hold everything in, you keep functioning, you paste on a smile or a neutral expression, and you do what needs to be done while inside there's this roiling ocean of emotion that you're constantly working to keep contained. And that work, that effort of suppression and management, it's exhausting. It takes enormous energy to keep feelings pushed down, to maintain the mask, to stay in control when everything inside wants to collapse or explode. For those of you carrying perfectionism, there's another layer of exhaustion that comes from the relentless internal pressure to do everything right, to meet impossibly high standards, to never make mistakes or show weakness or fall short of expectations. Even when you're not actively doing anything, your mind is often running through lists of what you should be doing, criticizing you for not being productive enough, comparing you to others who seem to have their lives together, generating this constant low-level anxiety about not being enough or doing enough. And that internal pressure, that voice that never lets you rest or feel satisfied, it drains your energy just as surely as any physical activity would. You might feel tired because part of you is exhausted from trying to be perfect, from trying to meet standards that are unrealistic and unsustainable. And your body is essentially saying, please, can we stop trying so hard? Can we just be for a while without all this pressure and evaluation and judgment? Some of you might also be dealing with the aftermath of stress or trauma, situations where your nervous system got overwhelmed and has been struggling to return to baseline, stuck in a state of dysregulation where it doesn't quite know how to settle, oscillating between hyperarousal and shutdown, between anxiety and numbness. And that dysregulation itself is exhausting because your system is expending energy trying to find equilibrium, but can't quite get there. Or maybe you're in a situation right now that's chronically stressful, a difficult job or relationship or living situation that keeps your nervous system activated day after day. And even if you've learned to manage it, even if you look fine on the outside, the constant stress is depleting your reserves, leaving you running on empty with no clear way to refill. What you're experiencing when you feel tired despite doing nothing is essentially a nervous system that's been running too hot for too long, that's depleted its resources, that needs rest and regulation and safety, but hasn't been given enough of those things. And the tiredness is not a flaw in you. It's not you being lazy or weak or insufficient. It's your body communicating clearly that it needs something different, that the current pace and pressure and level of internal activation is not sustainable. And the most compassionate thing you can do, the thing that will actually help rather than making things worse, is to listen to that message, to take it seriously, to recognize that rest is not something you have to earn through productivity, but something your body needs in order to function, in order to heal, in order to have any capacity at all for the life you're trying to live. So let's pause here together for a moment. Let's stop the thinking and the analyzing and the guilt and just come back to your body, to this moment, to the simple fact of your existence, right here and right now. Notice where you're sitting or lying. Feel the surface supporting you. And just acknowledge that you're tired, that your body is heavy, that your mind is foggy, without trying to change it or fix it or push through it, just noticing what's true. And as you notice, see if you can bring a little bit of gentleness to yourself, a little bit of that kindness you might extend to a friend who told you they were exhausted, instead of the harshness and criticism you're probably directing at yourself. You might place a hand on your heart or your belly, feeling the warmth of your own touch, and just breathing, not deeply or perfectly, just breathing in and out, reminding your body that right now, in this specific moment, You're safe. There's nowhere you have to be, nothing you have to do. You can just exist. As you breathe, you might notice your mind wanting to jump back into thinking, into planning, or worrying, or criticizing. And that's okay. That's what minds do, especially anxious minds. But see if you can gently guide your attention back to something simple and physical. Maybe the feeling of air moving through your nose or mouth, or the slight rise and fall of your chest or belly, or the weight of your body against whatever you're resting on. This is regulation. This is how you start to tell your nervous system that it can downshift, that it doesn't have to keep running at high speed, that it's okay to slow down. Your nervous system responds to cues of safety, to signals that tell it the threat has passed, and breath and gentle attention and stillness are some of the most powerful safety cues you can offer. You might also bring your awareness to the space around you, not in a hypervigilant way, not scanning for danger, but in a soft, receptive way, noticing what you can see and hear, the quality of light in the room, the sounds near and far, the temperature of the air, grounding yourself in the present moment through your senses. When you're lost in anxious thoughts, you're essentially living in a mental construct, in the past or the future, or in imagined scenarios. And bringing yourself back to sensory awareness is a way of returning to reality, to what's actually happening right here and right now, which is usually much less threatening than what your mind has been telling you. Look around and find something that feels neutral or pleasant, maybe a plant or a window or a piece of fabric, and just let your gaze rest there for a few breaths, taking it in without needing to think about it or analyze it, just seeing and being seen by this simple object. And as you sit with yourself in this gentle way, you might start to notice that the exhaustion has layers, that underneath the physical tiredness there might be emotions, sadness or frustration or loneliness or grief, feelings that have been waiting for a quiet moment like this to surface. And if that happens, if you feel tears coming or a heaviness in your chest, try to let it be there. Try not to immediately shut it down or distract yourself, because sometimes exhaustion lifts a little when we allow ourselves to feel what we've been carrying, when we stop using all our energy to keep everything contained. You don't have to dive into the feelings or understand them or fix them. You can just acknowledge them, give them a little bit of space, maybe say to yourself, yes, this is here, this is part of what I'm carrying, and it makes sense that it's heavy. One of the reasons you might feel so tired is that you've been fighting yourself, fighting your need for rest, fighting your anxiety, fighting your sensitivity, fighting the reality of your limits. And fighting takes energy, enormous amounts of energy. And it's a battle you can never win because you're fighting against yourself, against your own nervous system and body and mind. What if instead of fighting, you could soften, could surrender, not in a giving up way, but in an accepting way, accepting that this is where you are right now, this is what you're dealing with, this is the reality of your current capacity. And that's okay. It's not permanent. It's not a judgment on your worth. It's just information about what you need. Accepting doesn't mean you like it or want it or won't work toward change. It just means you stop adding the suffering of resistance on top of the suffering that's already there. Rest, real rest, the kind that actually restores your energy, it's not just about lying down or sleeping, though those things matter. It's about giving your nervous system permission to stop working so hard, to release some of that hypervigilance and tension and pressure, to exist without goals or productivity or performance for a little while. Real rest might look like sitting quietly and doing nothing, truly nothing, without guilt or the pressure to be doing something else. It might look like engaging in something gentle and absorbing that allows your mind to settle, like being in nature or listening to music or doing something creative with no agenda or expectation. It might look like connecting with someone who makes you feel safe and seen, where you don't have to perform or explain or manage their emotions, where you can just be yourself and that's enough. It might look like saying no to things, even things you normally say yes to, protecting your energy, choosing spaciousness over busyness because you recognize that you're running low and need to conserve what you have. And here's something important. Rest is not lazy. Rest is not selfish. Rest is not something you only deserve if you've worked hard enough or achieved enough or proven your worth. Rest is a biological necessity, something every human and every animal needs in order to survive and function. And you don't need to justify it or earn it. You just need it, period. The guilt you feel about resting, the voice that says you should be doing more, that's not truth. That's conditioning. That's messages you internalized about productivity and worth and what makes someone valuable. And those messages are wrong. They're harmful. And you can begin to challenge them by practicing rest anyway, by choosing rest even when the guilt shows up, by proving to yourself through experience that resting doesn't make you lazy or worthless. It makes you human. As you move through your day, the day that feels so heavy and impossible right now, see if you can approach it differently, not with the expectation that you'll get through everything on your list or function at full capacity, but with the intention to do what you can from a place of self-compassion, doing the bare minimum if that's all you have energy for, and trusting that that's enough for today. Maybe that means you accomplish one small thing and then rest. Maybe it means you let some things go completely, deciding they don't actually have to happen today or maybe ever. Maybe it means you ask for help, reaching out to someone and admitting that you're struggling, that you need support, that you can't do it all alone right now. The world won't end if you don't meet every expectation, if you don't perform at your usual level, if you prioritize your well-being over productivity for once, even though anxiety might tell you it will. And if you've been feeling this way for a long time, if exhaustion has become your baseline and you can't remember the last time you felt rested or energized, that's important information. That's your body and nervous system telling you that something needs to change, that the way you're living or working or relating or managing stress is not sustainable. And while you might not be able to change everything immediately, you can start making small shifts, building in more rest, setting better boundaries, seeking support from a therapist or doctor, being honest with yourself about what's working and what isn't. Chronic exhaustion is not something you just have to live with. It's a sign that your system is depleted and needs care, and you deserve to feel better than this. You deserve to have energy for your life. You deserve to not feel like existence itself is an overwhelming burden. Over time, as you practice listening to your body's signals, as you give yourself permission to rest without guilt, as you start to understand that your exhaustion is not a character flaw, but a nervous system response, you might begin to notice your capacity slowly returning, not all at once, not in a linear way, but gradually, like a battery that's finally being allowed to recharge. You might notice mornings where you wake up feeling slightly less heavy, or afternoons where you have a bit more mental clarity, or evenings where you don't feel quite so depleted. And those moments, even if they're brief, they're evidence that your system can recover, that rest and regulation actually work, that you're not permanently broken or incapable. You were just running on empty and needed time and gentleness to restore. You might also start to notice patterns, like certain activities or people or situations that drain your energy more than others. And you can use that information to make choices, to protect your energy more intentionally, to build a life that's more aligned with your actual capacity rather than what you think you should be able to handle. And you might discover that some of the things you thought were essential actually aren't, that you can let them go without catastrophe, that simplifying and doing less can actually lead to more well-being and more sustainable energy than trying to do everything and ending up depleted and shut down. The work of recovering from chronic exhaustion, of learning to live in a way that supports your nervous system instead of depleting it. It's not quick or easy. It requires patience and self-compassion and often support, but it's possible. And you're allowed to prioritize it. You're allowed to make your well-being and your energy and your nervous system health a central focus, rather than something you only think about after you've taken care of everything and everyone else. You matter. Your experience matters. Your exhaustion matters. And responding to it with care and understanding rather than criticism and force is how you begin to feel better, how you begin to build a life that feels sustainable instead of overwhelming. So right now, wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with, please know that your tiredness makes sense. It's not random or undeserved or a sign that something's wrong with you as a person. It's your body's intelligent response to stress and anxiety and overwhelm. It's the natural consequence of a nervous system that's been working too hard for too long without adequate rest and safety and support. You haven't done anything wrong by being tired. You're not failing at life because you don't have energy. You're just a sensitive, feeling human being navigating a world that's often too much, too fast, too demanding. And your body is asking you, gently but persistently, to slow down, to rest, to be kind to yourself, to recognize that you can't pour from an empty cup, and that filling your own cup, taking care of your own needs, giving yourself the rest and gentleness and compassion you need. That's not selfish. It's essential. It's how you survive. It's how you eventually have anything left to give to the life you want to live and the people you care about. And you deserve that care, you deserve that rest, you deserve to feel less tired. And small, gentle shifts, practiced consistently with patience and self-compassion, can help you get there.